What if the life you built, the family who trusts you, and the future you planned all rested on one lie? Mine did, and the past finally came knocking. From the outside, things probably look fine. I have a decent house on a quiet street in Ohio. Two-car garage, worn-out porch swing, neighbors who wave but never pry. My wife, Jenny, teaches 4th grade. Sweet woman, still leaves sticky notes in my lunch like we are teenagers. We have one son, Tyler, 14 years old, smart, stubborn, still thinks I hung the moon. And my job? I manage a small warehouse for a regional parts distributor. Nothing glamorous, but the pay is steady and nobody asks questions. I should feel safe, settled. But every single day, I wake up with this tightness in my chest like something's pressing down, waiting to snap. Because I am not who they think I am. I have carried a secret for over 20 years. Not the kind you can explain away with a drink and an apology. This one rewrote the story of my life. Made me a husband, a father, a coworker, and a liar. Every friendship I have ever built, every holiday photo on our fridge, every PTA meeting or Little League game. I live them all while keeping one part of myself hidden. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if I just came out with it. If I sat Jenny down one night, looked her in the eye, and told her the truth. But then I picture the look on her face, that hurt in her eyes. I see Tyler's confusion. I hear the silence that would follow. So I keep my mouth shut. I nod. I smile. I take out the trash. I coach baseball when no one else volunteers. And all the while, I make sure no one gets too close to the part of me that would tear this whole life apart. Last Thursday, something changed. Something small, but it shook me more than I want to admit. It was just a letter. A plain white envelope. No return address. Tucked in between the electric bill and a coupon pack. But when I saw the handwriting, my knees went weak. My heart kicked against my ribs like a warning bell. I did not even have to open it. I knew exactly who it was from. And if that person is reaching out now, after all this time, then the past is not done with me yet. Not by a long shot. What secret could one man hide for over 20 years? So dark, so buried, that even a single letter threatens to blow it all apart. I did not open it right away. Just stood there in the kitchen, clutching that envelope like it might explode in my hand. Jenny was upstairs helping Tyler with homework, probably something about ancient Egypt or fractions, whatever they teach in middle school these days. The sound of her voice drifted down through the floorboards, soft and familiar. It made me feel like a ghost, like I did not belong in that house anymore. I slid the letter into my coat pocket and walked out to the garage. That is my safe place, if you can call it that. Smells like oil and old paint. Half the shelves are stacked with junk I keep meaning to toss. Broken tools, half-empty gas cans, boxes full of screws I will never use. I shut the door behind me, sat on the old folding chair in the corner, and finally opened it. It was one page. Handwritten. No greeting. No signature. Just one sentence. You owe me the truth. That was it. No explanation. No threat. Just 7 words that sliced through me like a blade. And I knew exactly who sent it. Her name was Nadine. She was the one person in this world who had the right to say those words to me. And she had every reason to hate me for what I did. Back then, I was 21, drifting through life with more anger than direction. My friends called me dependable, but only because I showed up when they needed something and disappeared the second it got personal. I worked nights at a gas station, slept through most of the day, and tried hard not to think about the choices I had made. Nadine was a part of that mess. A big part. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had stayed. If I had stepped up instead of walking away. But I did not. I chose the easy road. The one that let me pretend none of it ever happened. Until now. I burned the letter in a coffee can behind the garage. Watched it curl and blacken until there was nothing left but ash. But the words stayed burned in my mind. You owe me the truth. For the next few days, I went through the motions. Work, home, sleep, repeat. But my chest stayed tight. I jumped when the phone rang. I started double-checking the locks at night. I watched Jenny's face a little longer than usual, wondering how she would look at me if she ever knew who I used to be. Tyler asked me on Saturday if I was mad at him. Said I seemed quiet. I told him I was just tired. He nodded, but I saw that doubt in his eyes, the kind kids carry when they know something is wrong, but no one will tell them what. And that was when it really hit me. This secret I had buried years ago, it was not just mine anymore. If it ever came out, it would not just wreck me. It would drag down everything I had built, everyone I loved. But Nadine was not the kind of person to send one letter and leave it at that. And I knew, deep down, that she was not done yet. People think keeping a secret is like locking something in a box. But it is more like living inside a glass house, with the walls slowly thinning, one crack at a time. Monday morning came around like any other. I kissed Jenny on the forehead before she left for work. Tyler grabbed his backpack and tossed me a lazy wave as he headed out to the bus stop. I poured my coffee, packed my lunch, and drove to the warehouse like I always do. But inside, I was on edge. At work, I am known as the guy who has it all together. Dependable, calm under pressure. I am the one they call when the new hires screw up shipping labels or when the dock gets flooded after a storm. I keep my head down, do my job, and make sure no one looks too closely at me. But that day, I caught myself flinching every time the office phone rang. I kept thinking someone would call asking for me by name. Or worse, someone might show up. I checked my email 17 times before lunch. Nothing from Nadine. Nothing strange. Just invoices, order forms, the usual. But it felt like I was waiting for a bomb to drop. After my shift, I sat in the parking lot for almost 20 minutes, staring at my phone. I thought about calling her. Not to explain, just to ask her what she wanted. But I did not. Instead, I went home like always. Ate meatloaf with Jenny and Tyler. Nodded along as Tyler told me about some dumb thing his teacher said. Jenny laughed like she always does when she has had a good day. It should have felt normal. But it didn't. Every second of that dinner, I was acting. Every smile, every nod, every damn bite I chewed. I was acting like a man with nothing to hide. After Tyler went to bed, I told Jenny I needed to check something in the garage. Truth was, I just needed to breathe. I stood out there in the dark, staring at the empty fire pit behind our house. I remembered a night, years ago, long before Jenny, long before this life. A night when I sat on a similar porch, next to Nadine, both of us holding beers, talking about what we thought our futures would look like. We were just kids, really. She had a way of believing in me, even when I was a mess. Said I had potential. Said I was good. If she could see me now, this careful version of myself I built on a lie, I wondered if she would still say the same thing. And then came the sound that made my blood run cold. A car pulling into our driveway. It was almost 10 at night. Too late for neighbors. Too late for deliveries. And it was not Jenny's sister or my buddy from work. I knew every car that came down this street. I peeked through the side window of the garage. Headlights off. Engine running. The driver did not get out. They just sat there, watching the house. Was it her? Was it Nadine? Or was this something else entirely, something worse? I stood frozen in that garage, barely breathing, watching the car idle at the end of the driveway. No movement. No lights. Just the faint rumble of the engine and a shape behind the windshield. Every instinct I had screamed at me to stay inside. But something else, something older and deeper, pushed me toward the door. I stepped out into the cold, the gravel crunching under my boots louder than it should have been. The porch light cast a long shadow across the yard, but it didn't reach the car. It sat just outside the glow, like it knew where the edge of safety was. I stopped halfway down the walkway. The engine turned off. Silence. I waited. Then the driver's door opened, and out stepped a man. Not Nadine. At least, not unless she had changed a hell of a lot. He looked to be around my age, maybe a little younger. Tall, sharp coat, clean shoes. Not the kind of guy who gets lost in the suburbs. He held a small envelope in his hand, but he did not move forward. "Can I help you?" I called out. He did not answer, just walked slowly toward the mailbox, opened it, slid the envelope inside, and shut it. Then he turned, got back in the car, and drove off without a word. I waited until his taillights disappeared before I moved. My hands were shaking by the time I reached the mailbox. I pulled the envelope out and saw it had my name written across the front. No stamp. No return address. Same handwriting. Nadine. This one was heavier than the last. Back in the garage, I opened it under the flickering light above my workbench. Inside were 3 photographs. Old ones. The first was of me and Nadine, sitting on the hood of my car. I must have been 19. She had that same wild grin, and I looked lighter, like I had not yet learned how to carry the weight I would spend years pretending did not exist. The second photo hit harder. It was a hospital room. She was in the bed, exhausted but smiling. And in her arms, a baby. Tiny, red-faced, wrapped in a blue blanket. I stared at that photo until my knees nearly buckled. But the third? The third was recent. It was a teenage boy, about 13 or 14. Light brown hair. Same eyes I see in the mirror every morning. I do not know how long I stood there. My chest felt like it was going to cave in. My ears rang. My hands would not stop trembling. There he was, my son. I had kept the secret of that night buried for 2 decades, but now the past had a face. And it was staring back at me. I stared at that photo for what felt like hours. It was not just the resemblance. It was the way the kid stood, shoulders tense, hands stuffed in his jacket pockets, like the world was already trying to take something from him. That look in his eyes. I knew it too well. That guarded, distant stare. I used to wear it every day. My son. I had always known there was a possibility. Nadine had told me she was pregnant. Back then, I panicked. Said I was not ready. Claimed I needed time to figure things out. The truth? I ran. I was scared out of my damn mind. 21, broke, working dead-end jobs, with no clue how to be a father. So I left. I blocked her number. Moved across the state. Started over. Told myself it was the right decision, for everyone. But now I was looking at the consequence of that choice, printed on glossy paper and shaking in my hands. I wanted to scream, or run, or hit something. But I just stood there in that cold garage, the photos scattered across my workbench, and felt like my lungs were full of cement. That night, I did not sleep. I just laid in bed next to Jenny, staring at the ceiling, wondering what kind of man I had turned into. A father with a ghost son. A husband who never told his wife the full story. A liar wearing the mask of a decent man. By morning, everything felt different. Tyler came into the kitchen, hair a mess, rubbing his eyes and asking if we still had cereal. Jenny kissed my cheek and reminded me to pick up milk on my way home. The dog barked at a squirrel on the porch. It was a normal Tuesday, and I was losing my mind. I sat at work, typing fake numbers into spreadsheets, pretending to care about a missing shipment of brake pads, but my thoughts kept drifting to that boy. What was his name? Did he even know I existed? Did he hate me? Then came the email. From Nadine. Subject line, "We need to talk." No greeting. No explanation. Just a short message. "He wants to meet you." I told him no. "He found you anyway. I am warning you now. This is not going away." I read it 5 times before it hit me. The guy who dropped the envelope? It wasn't Nadine's boyfriend. Or some lawyer. Or even Nadine. It was him. The boy in the photo. My son had come to find me. And now that he knew where I lived, what was he going to do next? I kept thinking maybe I had imagined it. Maybe the kid who showed up in that car was just some delivery guy with a serious attitude and perfect timing. Maybe I was projecting, looking for signs in every shadow. But I could not convince myself. Because deep down I knew. The email from Nadine confirmed it. She never used to write like that. Short, clipped, cold. She was angry. And she had every right to be. But what chilled me more than her anger was that line. "He found you anyway." That meant he had been looking, tracking me, probably for months. Who knows how long he had been watching from a distance, trying to decide what kind of man I was. What had he seen? My house. My family. Tyler. I started seeing him everywhere. At the grocery store, someone lingering too long in the cereal aisle. At the gas station, some kid watching me from across the lot. It was always just a glance, always just enough to make my pulse spike, and then they were gone. Maybe it was him. Maybe it was guilt. But either way, I was unraveling. I even caught myself looking over Tyler's shoulder, comparing photos in my head. Did they have the same nose? The same chin? Were they close in age? My stomach turned every time I thought about it. And Jenny, she was starting to notice. That Wednesday night, she asked if everything was all right. Said I seemed distracted. I told her work had been stressful, which was not a total lie. She nodded slowly, but the way she looked at me, it was like she was waiting for me to say something more. Something real. I almost did. I stood there in the kitchen, her hand on my arm, her eyes soft and patient, and I almost told her everything. About Nadine. About the baby. About the boy. About the fact that my entire life with her had been built on a version of me that never truly existed. But I couldn't. Because once you open that door, you cannot close it again. Instead, I said I was just tired. She smiled and kissed me, but something in her expression had shifted. That easy trust she always had, it flickered. And that scared me more than anything. The next morning, it happened. As I was leaving for work, there was something taped to my windshield. A photograph. New. Color. Me. Standing in the garage, holding the first letter. Written across the bottom in red marker were just 2 words. Still hiding. He was not just watching me. He was close. And now he wanted me to know it. That photo, it nearly dropped me right there in the driveway. It was the angle that got me. The garage window. That meant he had been close. Not weeks ago. Not somewhere across town. Right here. Maybe that night. Maybe watching from the tree line, from the neighbor's yard, or even from the sidewalk while I was standing there, burning the first letter like it could undo anything. I looked around, left, right behind me. Nobody. Just a normal Thursday morning. Birds chirping. A dog barking down the street. A delivery truck parked 2 doors down. Everything looked normal, but I knew better. I yanked the photo off the windshield, folded it in half, then again, and shoved it deep in my jacket pocket. My hands were sweating, even though the air was sharp with cold. My brain kept flashing with images of that kid, the boy who looked like me, who had come all this way to see the man who walked out before he even took his first breath. I drove to work in silence. No music, no radio. Every red light felt like a spotlight. Every set of headlights in my rear view looked like they were following me. When I got to the warehouse, I could barely focus. I snapped at one of the new guys for mislabeling a pallet. That is not like me. I am the calm one, the reliable one. But not that day, because the truth was clawing at the edges. Worse still, I kept thinking about Tyler. That night, I sat on the edge of his bed after he fell asleep. I just watched him breathe, listened to the tiny noises he made when he shifted under the blankets. What would he think of me if he knew? Would he hate me? Would he stop calling me Dad? I had never cheated on Jenny, not technically. Nadine came first. She was part of my life before I met Jenny, before I ever knew what I wanted to become. But I had never told her about Nadine, or the baby, or any of it. I figured it was in the past, dead and buried. Only it wasn't. I had built my entire family on a truth I never gave them. And now that truth was walking around, fully grown, watching me from the dark. The next morning, Jenny found the photo. I had hidden it in the garage, buried it under some old paperwork in the drawer beneath my tools. But I must have forgotten to push the drawer all the way shut. She held it up when I came back in from taking the trash out. "Is this a joke?" she asked. My blood turned to ice. I could not speak. Her eyes searched my face, waiting for me to laugh it off, or explain it away, or tell her anything that made sense. But I just stood there, frozen. "Who is watching you?" Jenny asked. She said it softly, like maybe if she whispered it, it would sound less terrifying. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Not at first. I was drowning in a storm of panic and memory. I had rehearsed this moment 100 times in my head, what I would say if it ever came to this. But now that it was real, my mind was blank. She was still holding the photo. The crease where I folded it cut right through my own face. Finally, I said, "It is nothing. Just something from a long time ago." Jenny narrowed her eyes. "Then why is someone taking pictures of you in our garage and writing things like 'still hiding'?" I could not answer. Not truthfully. So I lied. I told her it was an old friend. Someone I used to know before we met. I said we had a falling out, and he had resurfaced with some weird grudge. I played it off like it was a prank. A twisted, angry joke. She did not believe me. Not entirely. But she wanted to. She wanted to believe I was the man she had built a life with. The man who fixed the sink when it leaked and remembered her coffee order without asking. The man who danced like an idiot in the kitchen to make her laugh when she cried after her mother passed. So she nodded, said, "Okay." But her voice cracked just a little, and her eyes didn't soften the way they usually did. Later that night, I found her phone in the bathroom. She had been Googling things like, what to do when your husband is hiding something, and signs of emotional distance in marriage. That hurt more than I expected, because I knew I deserved it. Friday came like a gut punch. My boss pulled me aside at work. Someone had called asking for me. Said it was personal, but urgent. Left no name. Just said, "Tell him his son is looking for him." My legs gave out right there in the break room. I sat on the floor like an old man, staring at my shoes while the blood drained from my face. My boss asked if I needed to go home. I said no. Told him it was a scam. But my voice shook, and I knew he did not buy it. Back home, things were worse. Jenny was quiet. Tyler picked up on it right away, asked if we were fighting. I told him no. He said, "Good," and went back to his video game. But I saw the way his eyes flicked between us at dinner, waiting for something to break. And then, as if that day had not already dragged me far enough into hell, I got a text. Unknown number. No name. Just a message. "If you won't tell them, I will." and attached to it was a photo of Jenny, taken from across the street. That was the moment I realized this was no longer just about me. He had crossed a line. It was no longer about revenge. It was a warning, and my silence was no longer just a lie. It was a weapon that could destroy the people I loved. I barely slept that night. Every creak in the hallway, every gust of wind against the windows, I jumped at all of it. I kept checking the locks, walking the perimeter of the house like a man guarding a secret buried in the backyard. Jenny stayed on her side of the bed. She did not say a word when I crawled in, just rolled away, pulling the blanket with her. At 4:15 in the morning, I gave up on sleep. Sat in the garage with a cup of coffee and the photo of the boy who carried my eyes. I kept flipping it over in my hands, wondering what I would say if he showed up again. Wondering what I could say that would not sound pathetic. I should have told Jenny the truth then, but I waited. And that was my biggest mistake. Because the knock came 2 days later. Sunday afternoon. Cloudy. Wind picking up. I was folding laundry while Jenny and Tyler were out running errands. I thought I had a moment to breathe. Then came 3 sharp knocks. Not the kind of knock you give a neighbor. The kind that means someone came for answers. I opened the door. And there he was. In person. The boy from the photos. Except he was not a boy. He was taller than I expected. Lean. Wary. Wearing a faded hoodie and a look that said he had already decided who I was. His hands were shaking. I think he was more nervous than I was. For a second, neither of us spoke. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest. Then he said it. "I'm not here to ruin your life," he said. "I just want to know why you walked away." There was no anger in his voice. That was what wrecked me. He was calm, and I was the one falling apart. I stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind me. I could not have that conversation with him inside. Not in the house I had built on top of the lie. Not where Jenny and Tyler lived. We sat on the steps in silence for a minute. I could not stop staring at him. He had Nadine's mouth. My eyes. A little scar on his chin that I somehow knew came from a tree branch or a bike wreck or something else boys survive when they have someone around to tell them, "You're okay." I never got to say that to him. And now here he was, a full person, carrying all the weight I left behind. I told him the truth. Some of it. Enough to hurt. I told him I was scared. I told him I convinced myself walking away was doing him a favor. I told him I was wrong. He listened. He did not say much. And when it was over, he stood up, looked down at me, and said, "You still have a chance to fix it. But not with me. With them." Then he walked off down the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, leaving me there, gutted. And just as I was about to go back inside, I turned and saw Jenny, standing in the doorway. She had heard everything. I thought the worst was over. But now the real reckoning was only just beginning. Jenny did not say anything. Not right away. She just stood there barefoot in the doorway, arms folded over her chest, the wind tugging at her sleeves, her face a tight mask of disbelief. Her eyes locked on mine, searching for something. Truth, maybe. Or the man she thought she married. I tried to speak, but no words came. I had rehearsed so many versions of this moment. Imagine the shouting, the tears, maybe even a slap across the face. But what I got was worse. Silence. The kind that stretches for miles and builds walls higher than any lie ever could. She finally asked, "How long have you been hiding this?" I told her the truth. 20 years. Her face crumbled. That was when the tears came, not loud or messy. Just 2 streaks down her cheeks that she did not bother to wipe away. She stepped outside, pushed past me, and sat on the porch steps where I had been moments before. Her hands were trembling. "I gave you everything," she whispered. "I built this life with you. And you left a piece of yourself somewhere else, without ever telling me." I nodded. Because what else could I do? There was no excuse. No defense. Only the truth, now exposed and raw and ugly. "I thought it would never come back," I said. "I thought I buried it." She shook her head, laughing bitterly. "You buried it? You buried him." We sat like that for a long time, side by side, close enough to touch, but worlds apart. Eventually, she stood, looked down at me one last time, and said, "I need time. But do not expect everything to stay the same." She went inside, locked the door. I slept in the garage that night. Monday came. Tyler noticed. He was not stupid. He asked questions I could not answer. I told him Mom and I were working through something. He nodded, but that same guarded look I saw in the photo of the boy. I saw it on my own son now. A week passed. Then another. Jenny kept her distance. She was not cruel, just distant. Polite. Mechanical. The kind of cold that comes from deep disappointment. I sent one message to Nadine. I told her I had met him, that he deserved better, that I was sorry. She never replied. But a week later, I got a package. Inside was a photo album. Dozens of photos of him. First steps, birthday cakes, Halloween costumes, graduation caps. All the moments I missed. All the years I gave up. Taped to the back was a sticky note that read, "You cannot undo the past, but maybe you can show up for the future." I do not know what comes next. Jenny might leave. Tyler might never look at me the same. But the secret is gone now. It nearly destroyed everything. And maybe it still will. But in its place is something I have not felt in years. Air. For the first time in 2 decades, I am breathing like a man who is no longer hiding.